What is up, Z-Pack? Today I am talking about something very, very, very tragic and serious and horrible. It's about the nurse who was held hostage at Delnor Hospital in Geneva, Illinois, a couple weeks back. We talked about it on the show. New details have come to light that are just now becoming public, and so I'm willing to talk about them even though I knew about them before. Let's pull up your guys' video here. I think we're ready to start this show. Let's do this. Go, 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 go. I'm All right, guys, check it out. So this is a horrible story because here's what went on. This hospital in Geneva, Illinois, Delnor Hospital, it's part, I think, of Northwestern, community hospital, but they do see patients from local prisons. So what had happened was a patient, and I'm going to pull up this article which I linked to in the description for the show today. This particular prisoner who was in for, I think, vehicular theft, is that right, Tom? He had stolen a car, he's a repeat offender, had shown evidence that he was a bit belligerent and probably a security risk, was brought to the hospital because initially he swallowed hydrogen peroxide, and then follow up to that, he swallowed a prison issue flip-flop and came in to have it removed, and also drank some cleaning fluid or something. So in the process of that, he was belligerent and agitated to the hospital staff, had to be restrained, etc. When he got readmitted again, okay, he had a guard. The rules are the guards are supposed to shackle you, keep you in restraints, pay very close attention to you, the Sheriff's Department correctional officers from the county, Kane County. Well, what happened is that per what is now coming out to be a civil lawsuit against the county and the security company that took care of the hospital, so the private Apex Security that took care of the hospital, is that the officers guarding this inmate were basically derelict in their duty. They were sleeping on the job, they were using personal laptops, they were watching TV, and they left the guy unrestrained while he went to the bathroom. He came back. While unrestrained, he scuffled with the officer, took his 9mm weapon. The officer ran away. This inmate / patient, Taiwan, I think it is, was his name. Taishan, I forget. I'll have to pull up the article. For some reason, I can't get it up on my phone, so Tom will correct me later.
His name is Taiwan Salters.
Taiwan Salters, okay, 22-year-old guy, again, repeat offender. He takes the weapon, runs down the hall naked, finds a nurse, points the gun at her. Now, here's where it gets really crazy, because when this was initially reported, and I went live and talked about this, the title of that incident report was F with a Nurse, Die. We talked about how violence in the workplace and this whole incident and how this heroic nurse survived this hostage taking that ultimately ensued. So to recap the story, he found a nurse basically, and now this is sort of newish data. All right, now here's the thing. I had heard this the day that it happened from people in the Z-Pack who work in the hospital messaging me privately and saying, here's what actually happened that the media isn't saying. Please don't share this because it isn't public and we want to protect the victims. So out of respect for the victims, I didn't say anything, all right? But this was something I knew. Now what's interesting is the press didn't know this, or if they did know this, were they behaving in some ethical way where they decided they weren't going to share it due to the nature of what happened. So this is what happened. The inmate pointed a gun at this nurse, made her undress. Then the second nurse, who by all accounts from people who know her at the hospital is generally tough as nails, the first to intervene when somebody's being agitated and to step up, intervened and ended up, the first nurse was released, the second nurse was then moved to a decontamination room, whatever that is, and in the dark was then brutalized with the back of the gun, was hit repeatedly in the head, was threatened, was basically told, you are not leaving this room unless it's in a body bag by this inmate, okay? And third, was raped repeatedly. Now, this is horrifying, right? It's horrifying for any human being to undergo this, but let's bring this back to what's really happening here, okay? This correctional officer ran away when the guy grabbed the gun, hid in a room, did not apparently report to hospital staff what was going on. The whole time his inmate who he's supposed to be protecting everyone from, is running around the hospital with a gun, okay, brutalizing nurses. And he is nowhere to be found, hiding away. Now finally everybody comes in, the SWAT team came after 3.5 hours where this nurse is undergoing the most unimaginable ordeal, right? The SWAT team shoots the inmate, and actually the bullet also injures the nurse. None of this was reported by the media in the initial event. So the nurse was shot, raped, brutalized for 3.5 hours, and the inmate died. Now when it first came out, it was like everything ended well, we're lucky this, the heroic nurse did fine and everything was okay. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Yes, she was heroic. Yes, she probably helped that other nurse, right? But no, nothing was okay. Now, who is to blame for this? And why does it always seem that frontline healthcare people, especially nurses, are always the first thrown under the bus when stuff goes south? Like, how is it that their lives don't seem to matter when you have inmates from a prison that are inadequately guarded, right? When the security in the hospital is probably not stepping up and not requiring. Now, here's the worst part. A nurse walked into the room, saw this patient unshackled. I read the entire court document where the nurse is referred to as Jane Doe, her husband is John Doe, versus the county that employed the correctional officers and the private security company. They have not sued the hospital, okay? So I read the entire thing. If any of this is true, and again, these are allegations, it is horrific because a nurse apparently came in, found the inmate unshackled, and the correctional officer sitting there in the couch on his personal laptop or something. And by the way, the whole time the inmate was there, the inmate was allowed to use the hospital phone by the correctional officers, which is also against policy. The nurse had to pull the plug on that. And the nurse commented to the correctional officer before all this went down, hey, why is that prisoner unshackled? And never got a response, according to the allegations. Within the next half an hour, the inmate had taken the gun and all this stuff happened. So you tell me, okay, Z-Pack, is this the kind of crime that should ever be allowed to slip? Why isn't the media plastering all this over every freaking outlet in America right now? This is a crime against people on the front lines trying to help other people. Nurses are brutalized every single day. Frontline healthcare providers are brutalized every single day, and we let it slide. The administration lets it slide so that HCAP scores can do better. The public attorneys and the prosecutors' offices let it slide. I hear stories constantly about how they won't prosecute these things, and law enforcement lets it slide. How is it okay to assault a healthcare worker in a place of healing? But if you do that to anybody else on the street, you go to jail forever and they throw away the key. Like, what is going on? Tom, what the hell do you think?
The press is treating this like it's an occupational hazard. Like she was a lineman who got electrocuted. This is not an occupational hazard. It shouldn't happen. My wife's a nurse. She's been assaulted. As the spouse of a nurse who's been assaulted, it makes you feel just totally helpless. It's not, and I was like, where were the security? Where were the cops? Where was somebody? What happened to this fucking guy? I was beside myself for like 2 days about it. You know what I mean? Like, this should never happen, ever. It's not an occupational hazard. It's not part of your job. It's not part of anybody's job. Yeah. Fuck this guy. I'm not supposed to swear on him.
Hey, language, Tom. We're going to save the bad language for the comment section right after this when we come back and do Tribe Talk, and then we're going to go unplugged and unchained. But as I can tell you right now, I was furious, first of all, when I heard the news initially, which is why I did that live cast. So I already knew what had happened, that she was raped and traumatized, and the correctional officer had run, and that the shots were fired and everything. Having known that, but being unable to speak about it was very tough. So I tried to channel that anger into the discussion we had then. But now that it's public, we can clearly now. By the way, her identity is still secret, and I think nobody who knows her, please do not use her name. Do not release her name out of respect for her as a victim. Okay. And because as it is, she's traumatized, and I personally hope, if any of the allegations in this complaint are correct, I hope she gets a butt ton of money and is set up for life, because this was an absolute criminal negligence. And the fact, and you can see in the comments, we're going to answer them later, you're going to see in the comments that people are like, nurses' lives are expendable. It's because they're expendable that no one talks about it, that no one follows up. I mean, come on, you guys. Really. And I have had people message me over the last couple weeks since I did the initial live cast saying, look, violence against nurses has been a passion of mine for a while, understanding why it happens and how horrible it is. And I have PTSD from this. And I've had people send me these very heartfelt messages. This is an undercurrent of suffering in our system, and it's time we stood up and spoke about it. This should be a movement. It should be part of what we're trying to do in Health 3.0 to vanquish this kind of horrible suffering. How can we let this happen, guys? Like, who are we as a tribe?
People are always talking, they're saying, you guys are always saying Health 3.0, but you're never giving specifics. This is a specific action. This should never stand. It's not, like I said, it's not an occupational hazard. It should never be part of the job. It shouldn't be tolerated at all. I mean,
that's the bottom line. I don't think there's more to say. Now, I want to just elaborate on a couple things, then we're going to go to Tribe Talk in a separate cast, and we're going to answer your comments, okay? Here's again, the summary of what happened. The correctional officer was if you believe the allegations, the correctional officer was completely negligent, had his gun stolen, ran away like a coward and hid, didn't do his job or follow protocols, put two nurses' life and everyone else in the hospital in danger. In the setting of this, okay, after gunfire, this poor nurse who was heroic, and everyone who's known her has messaged me and said, this is someone who was always the first to step up and try to diffuse a conflict, and that's probably how she got wrapped into this, and now has suffered all this trauma that it's going to take years, and she may never heal, and for what? Because the people who are supposed to protect our frontline care providers are negligent, and nobody cares. But you know what? We care, right? Because we are on the front lines. We are the tribe that is working to transform healthcare. If we don't make a noise, no one is going to make a noise. Now, one thing I want to do is I'm going to try to set up like a P.O. box so that people who want to send her letters can send them to me, and then I'll find someone who she knows they can message me, and we'll get those letters to her, because we should support this brave nurse and tell her she's not alone, that others have suffered this kind of thing, and that we're all working to make sure this kind of thing never happens again. The correctional officer, he's already going to be in court, right? And Tom, this is going to settle out of court.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, there's no
She'll
way.
get money, but money can't make her whole.
It's not. That's not the thing. What needs to happen is we need policies, we need a change in our attitude towards this stuff. The violence against frontline healthcare providers has a zero tolerance. Zero. It is not a part of the job, ever, period. All right, on that note, come back in about 2 minutes. We're gonna go live with Tribe Talk, and we're gonna take your comments, and it's gonna be uncensored. So you can let your kids watch this, except for the couple of F-bombs that Tom dropped, but the next one, don't let your kids watch. All right, we out. Come back and see us.
Go, 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 go. I'm all right. Uh-huh.